I knew that I would feel love, but I never knew that I would feel a physical reaction. Whatever that chemical is, I feel that chemical flood throughout my body instantly. And that's amazing. One thing I have noticed about being a parent is that I actually don't have the stomach for news that I used to have. There have been terrible stories about, children experiencing starvation. I can't go near them. She grabbed my stomach fat and squeezed it as hard as she could with the contraction. And I said to her, hey, look, I've got my belt here. So if you wanted, you could grab my belt. She said, it's not the same. Social media is such a poison in our society. I am just totally opposed to Rumi having unfettered access to the internet, to social media, until he's 35,
Kia ora and welcome to Parents We've Met. Today we're very excited because on the couch we have got Jack Tame with us.
Hey guys.
So I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Talking about being a dad and also a brand new gig for you, which is parenting.
Yep.
A lot to cover today, but we really love to kick things off with a bit of an introduction to who is in your whānau. So can you tell us a little bit about your tribe?
Yes, I'll start with my immediate family, for want of a better term, and then maybe we can spread out a little bit. So I have an 8-month-old baby called Mani. My wife is Marva, and I have a stepson, although I never really call him a stepson, who's 8 years old. His name is Rumi. And then if we take the grouping a little bit wider, we're fortunate in that Rumi's dad and stepmum we are really close with. We have an amazing relationship, which I know not all blended families do, so I'm incredibly grateful for that. So we have Justin and Erin. Rumi has a little brother to his dad and stepmum who is called Aorangi. And then I am one of 4, so I've got 3 brothers and sisters. My sister has 3 children. My brother and sister don't have kids yet, although who knows what the future holds. I've got my parents, John and Linda as well. And then, of course, we've got all Marva's extended family as well. So a relatively big family, but usually there are either 4 or 5 people. 3 or 4 people under the roof at our place.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like we just,
I know.
It's like the family tree. We just
love it. So this far in, Jack, how's the adventure going, being a parent?
I get asked this a lot, and I always answer in this really boring way, but I honestly feel it's the most truthful way for me, in that I feel like all of the cliches are true in my experience. So the exhaustion is true. I could theorize the exhaustion and the scrambling and stuff before having an 8-month-old, but I appreciate it in my marrow now in a way that you never do until you're in the hot seat, right?
That's right.
But also the love that I feel for Mani is just extraordinary and unlike anything I think, again, I could understand when it was all theory. And there are little things, for example, that I hadn't really appreciated that have just been so amazing. So, for example, I knew that I would feel love, but I never knew that I would feel a physical reaction through that love. And so what I mean is sometimes I will have Mani sitting there and I'll do something to make him laugh. And he giggles at me, or if I walk in the door at the end of the day and his mum says, oh, look who's home, and I see him reach around, he catches my eyes for the first time and he smiles, and I feel a physical reaction. I feel whatever that chemical is, I can never remember if it's serotonin or dopamine or whatever, I feel that chemical flood throughout my body instantly. And that's amazing. That is just such an extraordinary thing. And so it has been, it's only 8 months, so it's been a bit of a whirlwind. But I think the appreciation I have for parents, the appreciation I have for my wife and for Rumi, our 8-year-old, is just, all of it has grown. It has been on the whole, an incredibly enriching experience.
I love it.
I can't imagine life like it was before now, and I'm sure you hear this all the time.
Oh, and I don't know if we do hear it all the time, and it's so lovely to hear. because delight is such a beautiful thing. It sort of made me a bit teary.
Yeah.
So just that
bit
someone
soppy
expressing, expressing that level of delight.
Yeah.
And he'll get it too. He'll receive
Yeah.
that level
Yeah.
of delight, which is just gorgeous.
Do you know, it's the feedback thing. So I think when you have a little baby and you go from this, incredibly kind of caring mode, right? Like so much of your attention is like, I'm just, focusing on, is everything okay? And I'm just, but then when you get a couple of months in, and I'd heard people say that the more you get to know your child, the more you come to love them. And I was always like, yeah, whatever. But I get it. I get how once you get to know your child and then you do stuff and they react in a positive way, it's amazing. So whether it's making them laugh and getting that reaction, or whether it's like lying on the bed at 5 o'clock in the morning and he's woken up, he's had a bad dream or he's been hungry or whatever and his mum's fed him, and then he lies down next to me and I can feel him sort of thrash and stuff, and he lies down next to me, his face is right next to me, and I'll breathe on his face, and all of a sudden I feel like the tension in his body kind of melt away and he feels safe and relaxed. It's just so amazing to have that effect on someone,
You wait till they're a little bit older, and now I get from my 6-year-old, Mum, your breath smells.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like that moment is like, okay, great, yep.
Yeah.
Coming to sort of routines or the actual everyday life for you and Marva, how's the division of responsibility going?
Well, I think she definitely has the harder job. So I'm not, looking to, minimize her role in any way. Like, it's extraordinary to me that she is able to kind of keep our household running, because she's lucky enough to be taking a year of maternity leave, and yet is like, I look at how much weight he's put on, and I'm like, all of that has come through you. Like, every single gram on his body has come through. That's like a gram of energy that you have had to produce. And that seems amazing to me. But also, I've tried to, it's been really important to me to try and support Marva in every way in which I can, because she has supported me in every way she can. So the way it kind of works at the moment is Marva has never been, and by her own admission, she has never been a morning person. I'm quite a good mornings person, quite productive in the mornings. And so the way it works at the moment is during the night, she does the heavy lifting. I might change a nappy if a nappy needs to be changed, but she does the heavy lifting with feeding and stuff. And then in the morning, sometimes at 4:45, sometimes like today, if I'm lucky, 6 a.m., I will get up with Marnie and I will have him for the first couple of hours before I go to work. And so Marva can have a couple of hours of undisturbed sleep. I'll get up, I will make sure Rumi and Marnie are both fed for the day. I'll change nappies, change clothes, all that kind of thing. I'll do the entire morning routine. And then I will drop Marnie. The last thing I'll do as I leave the house is Rumi and I will go out. I'll drop Rumi at school. I'll leave Marnie with Marva. And then throughout the day, we'll text a couple of times and just check in. And then when I get home at 5 or 5:30, I'm fully anticipating that door opening and Marva thrusting the baby in my arms and saying, okay, it's time for you to take him. And I would say that not wanting to be all, lollipops and rainbows, that's one of the things I've found most challenging personally about this new stage of fatherhood and parenting, is that I just have no time to myself. And I used to, I'm really fortunate in that I feel like I've sort of had this, I've sort of been eased into parenting with Rumi, but obviously an 8-year-old and an 8-month-old are very different, right? And so it used to be that I could get home and, there's often stuff around the house. We live in a really old house, and, whether it's mowing the lawns or changing some light bulbs, stuff like that, I, for whatever reason, found that quite important from a well-being perspective or something. I don't know what it was, but it's like a tidy house, tidy mind thing, or as a way to disconnect from work. Often it was quite a grounding thing to tend to some of those things at home. And I found it tricky sometimes to immediately get home and go from like, my head's in the game with work, and the second I get home, I'm like, right, now I'm with an 8-month-old. And I think one of the things that we've really improved on our relationship is like creating little spaces for each other, just to be present with the kids, but then also to mow the lawns or do whatever else. Like even 20 minutes can make a huge difference to everyone, you know?
Especially to that sense of productivity.
Yeah.
Where you often feel like there's a lot that's out of your control, but you can change a light bulb and you can mow the lawns.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's quite, I found it, maybe that was one of the things that surprised me on the downside, is that I just found, and you do hear parents talk about this a lot, right? Their kind of sense of self or whatever can be taken away. And so Marva, she I think would crave, you know, she's envious of the kind of conversations I'd be having at work and some of the, you know, just some of those adult connections that you have in a workplace. Whereas whereas I get home and I'm like, I would love to have 10 minutes just to sweep the driveway or whatever, you know, just little things like that. Yeah. So I think we've done a really good job of kind of working out those little things that are important to each other and trying to make sure we have a little bit of space for that, because it's good for everyone when you're able to do that. Yeah.
And great that you've worked it out at 8 months. Old, that actually we need those pockets. I still remember breastfeeding and I felt like there was just hours on the couch where I'd be looking around the home, all the things I was dying to do, just to have like a win, feeling like I was, you know, ticking something off. Yeah. That was hard. I think Mani was about 5 days old when you were back on radio and you thought, this is a good place to unpack birth. And I was listening and it was so funny. I actually had to print it out because you said, you just started throwing words and you sounded a little bit like still in shock and processing yourself, but you said it was surreal, beautiful, violent, wild, traumatic, thrilling. It was animal. I giggled. So proud of Marva and yet so helpless. And weirdly, I felt calm through it all, or maybe I was just stunned. My goodness, though, when it happened. I mean, you're further down the track. Does that still sort of sum it up, or do you look at it differently now?
100%. So the thing that kind of defined Mani's birth was that nothing happened until everything happened. So I think because he was looking a little bit undersized, and so they said, we might induce Marva on a due date. And so Mani was 40 weeks. And so Marva had whatever it is that they give you the drink or whatever to help induce you. And I'm no expert on the actual physiological stuff here, but my understanding is that a common experience is that they give you the drink, nothing happens. They give you the drink, nothing happens. Nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens until, like I said, it all happens at once. So I think we went from not really even being in labour to having a baby in like 40 minutes or something. Like it was a very short window. And so there was no real time to kind of digest, like, oh my gosh, this is actually happening, and we're going through this, and no gaps between contractions or anything like that. It was just, it all happened at once. And so I think for both Marva and I, especially for Marva, it was there was a component of trauma that was wound up in the experience. As amazing as it was, there was still part of her that was like, oh my gosh, and an hour ago we were in bed sleeping or watching Netflix or something, and now here we are holding a little baby. It just gave me, from my perspective, a much greater appreciation for like how incredible women's bodies are. Like to have gone through that and to have experienced that, and just to have me standing at the side, like just being like, oh, like you're doing really well, or keep it up. I just felt so lame relative to what Marva was able to do in that moment. So yeah, I think and I don't know, maybe it takes time to kind of properly digest that whole experience. It was, again, theoretically more or less what I had anticipated, and yet there's just no substitute for being there, holding your wife's hand as she's going through it. She actually, I remember she was in so much pain that she, and this may be TMI, but she grabbed my stomach fat, she grabbed my stomach and squeezed it as hard as she could with the contraction. And I remember being like, oh my goodness, I can't, like, this is so painful. And the contraction passed, and I said to her, and she was going, breathing, and I said, hey, look, I've got my belt here. So if you wanted, you could, like, grab my belt. She said, it's not the same. And she grabbed my stomach. And, like, a week later, I still had this huge bruise across my stomach from where she'd been grabbing me.
She just wanted you to experience
this is it, yeah. And I thought,
no missing out.
I thought I'm in danger of falling into a trap here where I'm going to complain about the pain of childbirth to my wife, you know. So I'm not going to fall for that. But no, I was just in awe of her. She was amazing.
I love too that you went on to say, the placenta. Wow, that thing could feed a family of 4.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good reminder that we are animals. You know, like we are.
Hang on, what did you do with the placenta? Now I want to ask.
I think we left the placenta there, but but it was. I mean, it is like a mammalian experience to be there and be like, wow, you know, it is beautiful, but it is, this is a pretty, you know, we live in a sanitized world. We choose to wear clothes. We think of ourselves as being, you know, elevated or civilized or you know, we think that we're at the sort of the peak of the evolutionary spike or whatever it is. But it's moments like that, you're like, you know, at the end of the day, there actually isn't that much that separates us from so many other beings on this planet.
Yeah. Exactly. From placenta to researching, you and Marva have a journalism background. Did you bring the same sort of rigour of research into having a baby? Were you really up with the play?
No. Truth be told, I read one parenting book before I...
Was it Jenny's?
Do you know Jenny?
No, it might not have been.
It should have been. But I'm such a nerd that I was actually gifted a book by an economist. Oh. And because I engage a lot with economics. And so I was gifted a book by an economist about sort of all the things to be concerned about and not be concerned about and all that kind of thing. I think I was in a unique position of sorts in that because Marva had a son, I was able to benefit from a lot of her personal experience and expertise. And so even little things like, you know, people talk about the difference between having their first child and having their second child. And then, you know, like think about my family's experience when I was growing up and the difference between how my parents probably treated me and how they treated my brother, who was 8 years younger and was the 4th, you know. And I just think that I was able to benefit from Marva not having a lot of the anxiety that a lot of first-time parents quite reasonably would have and quite understandably would have. And so, like, my default position is not that the baby's dying, you know? Like, my default position was more like, okay, I'm not totally sure about this. I'm going to check with Marva and she's going to have a good perspective on this. And, yeah, that was probably not something I'd considered beforehand, but because she had experience parenting and because Rumi is such a joy, I felt quite safe being able to defer to her. Yeah. And at the same time, I think, you know, it was probably a different experience for her as well, having Mani and having, you know, me as a first-time dad, so keen and enthusiastic at the side. So no, I didn't. I probably researched as much as I could. I mean, I did the classic apps, you know, where every day it says, "Oh, your baby's the size of an avocado" or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I did a little bit of that, but I also didn't. I didn't go too deep.
Sounds
And
really
I should say too, I said, sorry, Jenny, to interrupt. Because my family's really close, and I've been really involved with my nieces and nephews. I've got a couple of godchildren as well, and so I just feel fortunate to be benefiting from the experience of lots of other people in my life and lots of other parents in my life. Yeah.
When you talk about your parents, I've heard you mention them a few different times, and there's this real gratefulness for them, for who they are, and for the childhood that you had. Being part of the Tame clan, what was some of the lessons that your parents were trying to teach you and your siblings around life and the way to look at it and being curious?
I think, so I have said a few times before, like I knew I loved music when I was a teenager, but I knew I would never write like a generation defining album because my childhood was just so good. Like I just had no pain to draw upon. I couldn't be like, oh, you know, like you know, every time you read an autobiography from some famous person, they're always like, oh, you know, I had to grow up in so much hardship and stuff. And I was just like, I don't relate to this at all, because I just had the benefit of feeling safe and loved all the time and being exposed to so many incredible opportunities. We weren't a wealthy family by any stretch of the imagination, but we were just, you know, we were a kind of typical middle-class New Zealand family. But my parents really prioritized exposing us to as many opportunities as possible. And one way that sticks out to me, and this might seem like a weird story, is like I said, we didn't have heaps of money, but I remember my parents loved oysters. And often on their anniversary or on a significant birthday, the treat that they would have as husband and wife was that they would get a thing of bluff oysters to share. And as kids, we weren't big fans of oysters, but I remember on these special occasions, my parents would make us line up and they'd say, right, everyone come in and everyone gets an oyster. And looking back on it, I'm like, it's such an interesting thing, because they knew that we thought oysters tasted like snot, but it was really important to them that we could experience what it was like to eat an oyster and engage in that collective experience. And of course, I love oysters now, but it was just really important to my parents that we all had the opportunity to kind of learn from those sorts of things. So we were encouraged to pursue every and any activity that we were interested in, be it sport, be it music, be it drama, be it debating, whatever. I remember my parents would kind of draw up these complicated calendars on the weekends, because they know that they would have 3 supermarkets to get to in order to get, we get the fruit and veggies from here and we get this because it's cheaper there, but for a minimum of 4 sports games, plus we might be umpiring or coaching additional ones. So sometimes there would be 6 sports games to get to on a Saturday alone. And I just feel like a really profound sense of gratitude for the things they were able to expose us to, the qualities that they exuded in themselves. And I think the most telling thing is that today, my siblings and I are so close. People often say to us, oh my gosh, you get like the Tames are weirdly close. We've got the family chats, but we all have really strong relationships as kids. And my mum said to me once when I was about 19, I went down to, my sister had just started university in Dunedin, and so she'd left home and she'd gone to Dunedin in her first year. And I chose to drive down and visit her myself. And I was earning, $300 a week or something. So I thought I was rich compared to Dunedin students, and I remember I bought her like a big bag of groceries of like treats and things and took it down. And I remember my mum saying like, it's just such an amazing thing as a parent to see your children flourishing and see them want to spend time with each other and to care for each other like that and to show kindness to each other. It was an amazing thing. So I feel really, really grateful.
Apart from the oyster tradition and that beautiful one you've just shared, are there any other traditions that came through in your family? Sometimes it's just eating a meal together or something that just happened, just rotated around and around.
Yeah, I think simple things. So we definitely always tried to eat family meals together wherever possible. And birthdays and Christmas were a big thing together. But we also I remember each April school holidays, which is the kind of autumn school holidays, just as the weather's just starting to turn, we would go on a family holiday each year. And so, but it was never like a big overseas holiday or anything like that. It was just we would go and explore a different part of the South Island. And that was kind of the big, that was the kind of big thing that we would look forward to every year. But also my family had a real thing around like treats. So during the week and during the kind of normal term time, my parents were always just like doing whatever they could to get as many vegetables in us as possible. But come the term holidays, and especially those April holidays, all of a sudden we were allowed to have like chips and chocolate and Dunkaroos and whatever roll-ups or junk that that we would usually never be allowed during term time. And I think it's kind of created this culture now whereby whenever we're together, we all, it's not Dunkaroos and roll-ups anymore, thankfully, but we have a real kind of it's almost like, like an Italian family or something, or like a Spanish family, who get together and have a big Sunday lunch or something. There's something about like feasting together that I think has continued to today. Yeah.
And what about Marva and her Persian background? Does she have some traditions that are going to be woven into the family?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the big differences is that Marva's a Baha'i. And so, I knew almost nothing about the Baha'i faith until I got to know Marva and married Marva. And so Auckland has a relatively small but really quite a tight-knit Baha'i community. And I don't want to speak for them, but I would say one of the big things is that we've kind of woven, the Baha'i faith is now part of my life, and I'll attend lots of Baha'i events and things like that. But even little things like, we try to observe the Baha'i holy days. I've just finished a study group where, I'm involved with other Baha'i, with Baha'i adults and studying some of the Baha'i texts. And we finished the night as a family. We will read to Rumi before bed. The bedtime routine is that we have 20 minutes or half an hour of reading. So we might be reading the famous five or something like that. But the last 5 minutes, we sit down as a family. We have a karakia together. So we share Baha'i prayers before bed. And that's the very last thing we do before bed. So that's definitely a new kind of, a new component. And then, of course, we have the other, anytime her parents are in town, then her mum's always making amazing Persian food and that kind of thing. So,
I love how your parents had a real push for experiences and creating that curiosity in you. Looking back, where do you think your love for the news and current affairs kicked off?
It was very much at home and very much as a result of being in that household. So we had like this really long, steep shared driveway, which I know sounds fancy, but it wasn't like a Mr. Burns situation or anything like that. It was like a country manor. But in the mornings before school, I said I was a mornings person, so I used to wake up quite early. And my mum was an incredibly hard worker, so often I'd wake up just as she was leaving the house at 5:30, and then I would walk to the end of the driveway and get the newspaper just as it was thrown out of the car, and then I would bring it down, and my dad and I would sit there in silence often reading different halves of the newspaper and just sharing it. So he might read the front section while I was reading the World or I was reading the Sport or whatever, and then we would just kind of silently hand the other parts of the newspaper to each other as we were reading them. And of course, naturally, there are questions that come up if I don't understand a story or I'm interested in something, I would ask Dad about it. And I never thought of it as being, you rarely do. You rarely think of formative experiences as being formative in the moment, right? But I never thought much of it. All I knew is that as a young person, I was really interested in the news and current affairs, and I loved reading the newspaper next to my dad in the mornings. I recently was home over Christmas, and I was going through an old family photo album, and I found a certificate from when I was 10, and it said to Jack, for his keen interest in news and current affairs. And it's so amazing because I can honestly draw like a straight line from getting up and reading the paper with my dad in the morning all the way to my job today. And he still constantly sends me links. Well, actually, he doesn't send me links. Very irritatingly, he takes photos on his super old phone. He takes photos that are slightly out of focus of articles and expects me to read them. So I'll have to read through the blur. I'll go, okay, what's the headline of the article? I'll go and track it down on, the Herald or whatever and go and read that. But we still kind of have that relationship today.
That's lovely. Yeah. He's wanting you to be curious, to go find it, do the research yourself. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. Go and hunt it out yourself, yeah.
One of the sayings we have at Parenting Place is that children are good observers, but they're poor interpreters. And so with your diving into the news, did your dad help you debrief? I mean, the news is different now to what it used to be, and I'm always trying to keep the grandchildren away from the news. But when you had questions or concepts, was there a place for unpacking?
Definitely. And my dad's attitude was always just treated us as an equal when it came to difficult questions like that. So if there were questions about, conflict or war or, like really grim things in the news, I always just felt totally comfortable being able to ask those questions. And he would always, like, his ethos today would still be, he'd just tell me honestly. And in a way that was age appropriate, of course, but he never, I think, tried to sugarcoat things too much. So actually I can remember like really, I can remember some really terrible news events from my childhood. I can remember the Port Arthur massacre, for example, and I can remember it because I had all of these questions, and I can remember the Cave Creek disaster. But I had all these questions, but I felt comfortable being able to go to my parents and ask them, and they would say, "Oh yeah, this is the situation," and they would never, like I say, it wasn't like they were going, "Here's every terrible detail." It was more that they didn't try to hide it. I think they figured if I was old enough to be able to pick up things or read headlines or whatever, then, Dad was always like, I'll be honest with you. Yeah.
I think children feel such a safety when they know that their questions are acceptable, and that there is really no question out of bounds. Yeah. And it's a parent's job to sort of unpack it according to their sort of developmental age and
Yeah. I think news, I mean, you mentioned it's changed a lot from probably those first few papers that you've opened, the way that it's put out, the fast turnaround, the way it's consumed. Now working in news and also being a parent, have you got any tips or thoughts for parents of how to help their kids to break down the news or help them to be critical thinkers?
That is such a good question. Do you know one thing I have noticed about being a parent, and I'll get to your question in a moment, is that I actually don't have the stomach for news that I used to have. And I know that sounds pretty rough, but there have been terrible stories about, children experiencing starvation, and, I just have personally, I see headlines about war or about, terrible murders and things like that. And whereas once I wouldn't have thought twice about, clicking on them and reading the details. I can't go near them sometimes. So that's one thing I've observed in myself. The world is a really complicated place. When Rumi comes to me and asks questions about the news, again, I try and do what Jenny does and recommended, and give him an age-appropriate but honest answer. So I kind of like my dad, I suppose. I never try and sugarcoat things too much. But I've not yet got to the stage where I've had to have the, like, here's the information you can trust and here's the information you have to be more skeptical about. Although I can't imagine that's too far away. The big thing for me is that when I was a kid, I felt like largely you could trust media, and you could think that, okay, yeah, sure, maybe you're watching TV for a little bit too much time or anything like that, or something like that. But I think that social media is such a poison in our society. And so one thing that we are pretty steadfast on, and I'm sure this will be tested in the years to come, is that, I am just totally opposed personally to Rumi having, unfettered access to the internet, to social media until he's 35, and even then, I think it's caused all sorts of problems in society at large, but especially for children. I think raising kids today in the social media / digital age is so much more complex than it was when I was being brought up. And the only real way I can see of trying to keep a lid on that for the time being is by trying to manage access to those kinds of tools, which is, and again, I know that we're yet to, we're probably 3 years away from the really tricky conversations there, but they're coming.
Yeah. I have got one friend who her daughter's about 13, 14, and she said, if you wait till 16, I'll take you on an overseas trip. And she's like, I think it's worth the money to have something to work towards. Yeah. And she said, and then at 16, I'm going to try for, if you're 18 you'll get another one.
2 trips.
I mean, I think, it is really hard. I don't think there's ever been anything quite like it. But I can see, I mean, that's the sort of thing that worries me as a parent. And, trying to get some sort of like alignment with friends' parents and those kinds of things so that some of the social pressures are removed, is probably the best we can do for now. I do wonder, either we're just going to totally destroy our societies. Or I wonder if in 20 years we will look back at this and be like, can you believe this stuff was unregulated? Like we just used to be like, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah. You mentioned about snatching pockets of time for yourself and for Mava. What else are you doing to look after your well-being right now?
So I know it's not a very sexy answer, but I'm a huge believer in routine. And no one ever talks about the value of routine, but
we do.
Okay,
we
good.
Love routine.
I mean, routine in a household is vital. I
Yeah.
mean, kids obviously respond so well to routine because it gives them a kind of a framework and security and all of those other things. But I am just so much of my job requires kind of flexibility and requires a nimbleness to react to things. That a lot of the things outside of my professional life, I really, I really value a tidy house, which I know is risky when you've got an 8-month-old and an 8-year-old, but I really value regular exercise. I really value having a consistent bedtime and getting the most sleep possible. I really value eating a lot of fruit and vegetables. I really value having social connections from time to time. I do therapy once a month, not because I feel like I need it necessarily, but because I find it really valuable just to have a little bit of a pressure valve sometimes so that I can kind of have someone pour out whatever I want to pour out on them and not necessarily bring it into my relationship and that kind of thing. So, those are the things I would prioritize.
Yeah. We talked with Petra Vagist last season, and I was saying about how for me on my list when I was looking for someone, predictability was really sexy, and we had a bit of a laugh around. So routine, predictability, they're all good things.
I think it's, I just think the routine is really underrated.
Yeah.
Like it's, and especially if you're in a kind of, in a for want of a better term, you've got quite a high pressure job and that kind of stuff. Actually having the dependability that comes with routine, I think is really important.
Is there a piece of encouragement that was given to you that you've held on to? I kind of think for me, I always thought that my husband's more like the fun person, and I remember a mum saying to me, "You're such a fun mum," and it was just like what I needed to hear. I'm like, am I? I am, and I held on to it. I'm like, I am a fun mum. Is there something that someone said to you and you've like kind of put that away in your pocket?
I don't know if I've certainly not been described as a fun dad. I think if there's one thing I aspire to, it's just because professionally, like so much, I've been working in my job and working on TV since I was 19, and the danger of working in that industry, even as diminished as TV is that it's really easy to mistake that as being your kind of identity. And when that's all that you rely on for your kind of sense of worth and all of that stuff, I think that's a really dangerous ground. But it also means that you are so, and look, I'm a workaholic, I'm not gonna lie, but it also means that you are constantly kind of seeking validation in the professional space. And I think that if I was constantly seeking validation in the professional space, it would mean I did a really poor job of being present when I'm home and when I'm with the kids or when I'm with Marva. And so I think one of the things I really aspire to doing is, as much as I sort of need to have a vague idea of what's happening in the world all of the time, at least a vague idea, it's being able to kind of compartmentalize work sufficiently so that the people at home are getting the best of me.
Yeah.
And I don't think I nail it all the time, but I think in the ways in which we've kind of set up the day, and this goes to what we were talking about, having a couple of hours clear air in the morning is just such valuable time. I think about the parenting I've had with Rumi, and in some ways I'm actually prouder of that than of anything with Marnie, because I think over the last 2 or 3 years that we've been living together, I have really invested time with Rumi. And so I've been able to put all of my work stuff to one side, and I've really invested time with them. And little things like, Rumi's in full immersion Māori, and is a beautiful Māori speaker. His dad's a Māori teacher, which is like amazing. So I kind of looked at his life and thought, you know what, what's something that would really give value to Rumi? And it was teaching him how to read English. And so I really invested early on in spending and putting my phone away and ignoring the news headlines in the morning and spending time with him practicing reading English. It's just been super rewarding for me. Like I thought, oh, this will be a drag potentially, teaching a kid to read or whatever and spending all that time together in the mornings. And instead it's been really, really enriching. And I think being able to have compartmentalized some of that work stuff so that I could be as present as possible with him. And as a result, I think our relationship is really strong. Yeah.
I love those calls you've made, Jack, and the front footing of the connection that you have there. And you've spoken so beautifully about your childhood and your parents. And one day your children are going to reflect on their childhood and the experiences they had and the love that they felt. What would you love to know that they're going to say about you?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, I mean, I would love for them to feel like, in the same way that I did, that they were exposed to lots of opportunities. I would love for them to always say they felt like safe and respected by me, safe around me, but respected by me. And I think I would like them to look at me as a good man, ultimately, as someone who was a real role model in the way he treated their mum, but also in the way that he kind of balanced the stuff in his professional life with the stuff in his home life, because I think it's really easy to get those things out of whack, as I've kind of suggested. Yeah. So I think, I would really love it if in years to come they kind of look at me and say, you know what, sure he didn't get everything right, and but he is like a really thoroughly decent, good man. Yeah.
Sounds great. I love that you brought up that loving mother too. I think it's such a gift to our kids to see. To see that shine. Are you getting teary again? We started a bit teary.
Softie.
We ended a bit teary. Hey, thank you so much, Jack. So appreciate your insights. And you're still on early days, but we can see the trajectory is just looking so good. So thank you so much for sharing. And thank you for hanging out with us as well. This is season 3. We've got 2 seasons before, and this is episode 1 actually kicking into it. So if you've enjoyed this chat, which I'm sure you have, make sure you go check out. We've had Petra Bagast on, Richie Hardcore, Nathan King, Edu Drent, Kano Lloyd, so many great chats. So go and have a look. And if you want to find out more about us and what we do, head to parentingplace.nz.